You heard in the clip the lawyer at pains saying that this particular resignation had nothing to do with the SIU investigation. In fact, as it relates to that tender, which was above board, according to him. So what can we make of this SIU investigation? Is it a smokescreen, dare I say, by the ANC ahead of the upcoming elections, as you've heard from the EFF? Are we meant to believe that this is the sole purpose behind this resignation is because of this tender?
You know, if it was just because of this tender, I think that we would know a lot more about the resignations. I think the fact that there's been very little communication about the reasons for the resignation. There's been very little communication from the president around the terms of resignation and what he has accepted as resignations. For me, that means that there's a lot more at play than just a simple resignation due to the investigation. Also, you know, you have to ask the question of, was it just coincidence that the resignations happened following a meeting and the apparent altercation or the ministerial interference in board operations? There's been a lot of controversy around various board decision making in the last couple of months. We know that the finances are a big problem and a big issue. It's been back and forth in Parliament. So I can't believe that it's just because of the SIU investigation. There's a lot more at hand here than that when we're looking at these resignations.
So top of mind to you is, how did we get here? But perhaps let me ask it this way. Will we ever see an SABC free of political interference?
To be completely honest, I think that if we allow this board to be dissolved, if we allow an interim board to be put in place, I am not very optimistic that we're going to bring the public broadcaster out of this. We are on a direct path for the public broadcaster to become a state broadcaster. And I mean, again, if this wasn't the first crisis, if this wasn't the first instance of political interference that we've seen, I think that I would have a lot more hope about this issue. But the fact is, every single time that we see the public broadcaster sort of gain traction and good decisions, or there's a level of governance and accountability taking place, you see an instance of political interference. Now, we need to go back a couple of months when looking at this again. And you know, the initial 4 vacancies that needed to be filled on the board have been there since March. The portfolio committee have had months to fill these vacancies, yet they haven't. They kept postponing the interview process, and you know, you have to ask yourself the question of whose interests does it serve to not have filled those positions. Again, there's no reason why we should be left with 8 vacancies on the board at this point.
Now, you heard earlier in the clip the EFF saying that the sole purpose of this was to further destabilize the SABC. Now, my question to you is talking directly about the ANC. Now, to what gain, especially in light of the elections next year?
You know, we saw a lot of political interference taking place at the SABC in our 2016 local elections. And we saw an era with Hlaudi Motsoeneng. It's all very fresh in our minds. But that is a perfect example of how political appointments or political interference in the broadcaster can actually impact content. Our monitoring, and MMA has been monitoring every election period since '94, our monitoring showed biased reporting within the SABC during the election period purely because of editorial decision-making, which was a result of management and the sort of downward interference. There's a very high chance that, you know, if we get the interim board and we get political influence or political players being involved in this process, that we're going to see that again. And that is a direct definition of what a state broadcaster is. You know, it's obviously in the interests of the ruling party and of the ANC to have broadcasting that's aligned to its mandate and have control. You know, if you think of examples, when you look at civil unrest or when you look at tension within a country, the broadcasters are the first targeted institution that gets taken control over. It's a critical institution in any democracy, and it's also the first that gets targeted. And you know, from what we're seeing from ministerial interference, it's on the path to having that interference yet again.
Now, you talk about, obviously, the country needing a public broadcaster. In fact, in a statement that was released by the Parliament's Portfolio Committee, the chairperson stating that the Broadcasting Act is clear on what number constitutes a full complement of the SABC board, and we know that's far from where they are currently. Now, they've asked that the bosses have asked that the executive at the SABC steer the ship. Now, as an SOE, the SABC needs to, amongst other things, uphold good corporate government principles. Now, can they do that with the ANC currently at the helm?
You know, it's more about the people that are making the decisions, and for me to sort of measure that, you need accountability, you need transparency, and you need independence. Without those three critical elements, you're looking at, you know, just another institution with bad governance and not very good leadership. And you know, the board, there has been a lot of controversy around the current board. You know, no one can deny that. But it's the first board that we've had in a very long time where we've seen a level of accountability. And again, they've been handed an institution that was crumbling beneath them, and it's a very difficult task. You know, I can't imagine that there are many other people in the sector at the moment that would be willing to sit on a board in the crisis that it's in at the moment. So we're dealing with a very complicated, very controversial institution at the moment, and yeah, it's not a very good situation.
Fantastic, Thandi. That's where we have to leave it for now. Thank you very much for your time. That was Media Monitoring Africa's Thandi Smith. Now,